Welcome back to the deep dive. It's good to have you here with us. I want to start today by asking you to do something that might feel a little uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to just imagine for a second that your phone battery dies right now, and your laptop charger is missing. The power goes out.
The trifecta of modern anxiety.
It really is. And you're just sitting there, no podcasts, which is ironic, I know, no scrolling, no news alerts, nothing, just you. And the silence. How does that thought make you feel relaxed? Or does it make your skin crawl just a little bit?
Well, for the vast majority of people, I think skin crawl is probably the polite way to put it.
Right.
Yeah, the data we see suggests it's much closer to mild panic, a genuine feeling of, what do I do now?
It's the terror of the void, isn't it? And that's really what we're tackling today, a subject that hits so close to home for anyone living in this, hyper-connected, notification-drenched world.
All of us.
We are terrified of being bored, and I think underneath that we're terrified of being alone. But here's the central question we're wrestling with today. In a world where we're so desperately trying to avoid solitude, could solitude actually be the secret weapon we're missing?
It is the great paradox of our time, isn't it?
Yeah.
We have, objectively, never been more connected.
You have the entire population of the planet in your pocket.
Exactly. And yet, every single metric we have, you look at mental health surveys, sociological data, it all shows we are lonelier than we've ever been. And the research we've pulled for this deep dive suggests that the cure for that loneliness isn't necessarily more connection.
Which feels so counterintuitive.
It does. It might actually be a very specific and I think a very misunderstood kind of disconnection.
And that is the tension we are here to explore today. We've pulled together a massive stack of analysis on this topic. Does solitude lead to self-fulfillment? And we didn't just, Google it. We took a council of elders approach, but with AI. We fed this core question and all the surrounding research into Claude, Gemini, Perplexity, Copilot, Grok, DeepSeek, and of course ChatGPT to see where they agreed, where they fought, and what the final synthesis really looks like.
And the results were, well, they're messy, they were complex. Because on the surface, these sources are screaming a contradiction at us. They're telling us that cutting yourself off from the world might just be the only way to truly understand your place in it.
Okay, but there's a huge but coming. I can feel it.
There's a huge but. And I want to stress this heavily right at the top. If you do it wrong, it doesn't lead to enlightenment. It leads to despair. It is a razor's edge.
So our mission today is to walk that edge without falling off. We need to first decode the difference between loneliness and solitude because they are absolutely not synonyms.
Not at all.
Then we need to get under the hood and look at the mechanics, like what is physically and psychologically happening in your brain when you're alone that creates these benefits. And finally, we want to give you a roadmap. We want to help you turn alone time from a trap into a tool.
I think the best place to start is with that high-level synthesis.
Yeah.
If you look at all these different perspectives combined from the behavioral psychology databases that Perplexity can access, all the way to the sociological frameworks analyzed by Claude, the consensus is that solitude is a powerful pathway to fulfillment. That's the quote.
A powerful pathway.
And here's that. But, again, it is not automatic. Just sitting in a room by yourself doesn't make you enlightened.
Right. It's not a magic trick. You don't just close the door and suddenly become a Zen master.
Exactly. It just makes you alone. Solitude is a tool, not a cure-all. And the core distinction that we have to make before we go any further, this is really the foundation of this entire deep dive, is that difference between solitude and loneliness. Because if you were just a camera on the wall, they look exactly the same.
Physically, they're identical. You are in a room, no one else is there, it's quiet.
Correct. But internally.
Yeah.
In your head and in your body. They're completely different universes. The sources describe solitude as the objective state of being alone. It's just a fact. I am alone in this room.
Okay, just a neutral statement of fact.
Yes. Loneliness, however, is the distress of feeling disconnected. One is a sanctuary, the other is a prison.
That is a powerful image to hold on to. Sanctuary versus prison. But I have to push back on that a little bit.
Please.
Because I think for a lot of people, the idea of sanctuary sounds nice in a brochure, but the reality when they're actually sitting in that quiet room feels a lot more like the prison. When does the sanctuary become the prison? Let's get into section 1, the architecture of alone time. What actually distinguishes the two? Is it just like positive thinking?
It's more structural than just thinking positive.
Yeah.
It really boils down to one specific concept that appeared in almost every single source we analyzed.
Okay, what is it?
Intentionality.
Intentionality. Okay, unpack that for me. Because that feels like it could be a buzzword.
It does, but in this context, it's the mechanical switch. We saw this specifically emphasized in the analysis from Claude and from Gemini. They argue that solitude is beneficial only when it is intentional and self-determined. It is all about the choice.
Ah, okay. So
Okay.
it's the difference between saying, I am choosing to go to my room to read this book because I want to, versus
Versus, no one called me, my plans got canceled, so I guess I'm stuck in my room.
that's a huge difference.
It's a world of difference.
Yeah.
And that distinction changes the hormonal and psychological response in your body. Claude makes this point that we have to contrast beneficial solitude with what it calls social withdrawal or avoidance.
Okay, so what's the difference there?
Well, if you're retreating because you're afraid of the world or because you're anxious about a social interaction or you're just hiding from judgment, that stems from fear. That is a defensive crouch. That is not the solitude that leads to growth.
That's interesting. So, okay, here's a gray area. What if I'm sitting alone because I'm totally burnt out and I just can't deal with people right now? Is that solitude or is that avoidance?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it comes back to the intention. If you are choosing it to recharge so you can engage better later, that's solitude. If you are doing it because you are terrified of rejection or conflict, that's avoidance.
Got it.
Looking at the definitions provided, loneliness is described as distressing emotional state. It's characterized by a perceived lack of desired connection. And that word perceived is doing a lot of work there.
You want to be connected, but you feel like you aren't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In contrast, beneficial solitude is a voluntary and positive experience. You are alone because you want to be. You're moving toward yourself, not running away from others.
You know, it's interesting because Perplexity brought up this insight that research shows solitude isn't inherently negative at all. It depends entirely on how one perceives and engages with it.
The mindset shift.
The mindset shift. But is it really just as simple as telling yourself, I chose this? Can you actually trick your brain like that?
To an extent, yes, you can. The framing is incredibly important. Copilot used a great metaphor here. It said that solitude should be viewed as a sanctuary from the incessant demands of daily life, not as an exile.
Not an exile. Wow.
Think about that. If you frame it as, I am being exiled from the group, your brain registers social pain. And we know from neuroscience, this is well established, that social pain lights up the exact same regions of the brain as physical pain.
Wait, hold on. Really? So loneliness actually physically hurts?
Yes, it is registered in the brain in the same way as a stubbed toe or a burn. But if you frame it as, I am entering my sanctuary, your brain registers safety and recovery. It lowers cortisol. It engages the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest system.
I love that distinction. Not an exile. Because I think that is the core fear, right? If I step away, I'm being exiled. I'm missing out. FOMO is real.
It's deeply real.
We are wired to be terrified of being kicked out of the tribe.
Absolutely. It's evolutionary. Being kicked out of the tribe for most of human history meant death. A lone human on the savannah is a dead human. So we have this deep lizard brain panic when we feel like we aren't included.
So that explains the biological fear. But there's another layer to it, isn't there? Why do we avoid it even when we know we're safe? Even when we're just sitting in our own living rooms?
Well, Claude touched on this,
Yeah.
and it's a bit confronting.
Let's hear it.
The expert consensus is that without the constant input and expectations of others, you are forced to confront your own thoughts.
Ooh. Yeah. The noise stops.
And when the noise stops,
Right.
it's just you. When you're with people or when you're scrolling through your phone, you are reacting, you're performing, you're constantly processing external data.
Right.
When that stops, it's just you. And for a lot of people, that silence is deafening because they haven't practiced listening to themselves. And they might not like what they hear.
It's like when the power goes out in your house and suddenly you hear all the creaks and groans of the building that you usually ignore because the TV or the dishwasher is always on.
That is a perfect analogy. You hear the pipes settling,
Yeah.
you hear the wind outside, and your mind, those are your anxieties, your regrets, your unasked questions, it's uncomfortable.
Deeply uncomfortable.
But that discomfort is actually the doorway. And that brings us to what we're calling the benefits package. Because if you can get past that initial scariness, if you can sit with the creaks and groans without immediately turning the TV back on, the sources all say the payoff is massive.
Okay, let's get into that. Section 2. Why solitude works. I want to be clear for you listening. This isn't just about resting or, taking a nap. This is active.
Very active. It's like a metabolic process for the psyche. And the first major benefit, the one that underpins all the others, is deep self-reflection and awareness. This is that concept of turning inward.
Which, sounds a bit abstract. Turning inward. We hear that in yoga class all the time. What does that actually yield in a practical sense?
Well, Gemini and DeepSeek describe what it yields as existential authenticity.
Existential authenticity. Wow. That sounds incredibly fancy. Break that down for us without the PhD, if you can.
It does sound academic, I know, but it's actually very, very practical. It just means you stop performing.
Okay.
Think about your life.
Yeah.
When you are at work, you are the employee. You have a script. You have a certain posture, a way of talking. When you're with your kids, you're the parent. You have a whole different script. When you're with your partner, you're the spouse.
We're basically wearing masks all day. I don't mean that in a fake way, just functional masks.
Exactly. They're social lubricants. They help us navigate the world. But when you are alone, truly alone, all the scripts vanish. The masks come off. You are just you. And you get to discover who you actually are when there's no one there to impress or appease or manage.
So you stop optimizing your personality for the audience in the room.
Right. You aren't mirroring anyone's energy. You're not code switching. Grok points out that this clarity allows you to then align your actions with your authentic self. You might realize, wait a minute, I don't actually like this job, or I actually really care about this weird hobby I've been ignoring because I thought my friends would think it's uncool.
You can't hear those realizations when there's too much noise.
You literally can't. It's a signal-to-noise ratio problem. As you said, if the noise of the world is at volume 10, you can't hear the signal of your own intuition, which is usually whispering at, like, a volume 2.
Perfectly put. And that leads right into the second benefit, which I think is a huge one. It's the creativity engine.
Oh, this is the big one.
Yeah, I mean, historically, right. You look at writers, artists, thinkers, almost all of them have these periods of intense isolation. It's the whole cabin in the woods trope.
It's a trope for a reason.
So why? Is it just to avoid interruption, or is there something deeper happening in the brain?
It's both. ChatGPT noted that solitude removes distractions to allow for original thoughts. And that word original is so important here. If you are constantly consuming other people's ideas, podcasts, news, social media threads, you are remixing. You're not creating from scratch.
You're just regurgitating.
Pretty much. Solitude provides the mental space necessary for complex problems to be mulled over without interruption. It's like letting a pot of soup simmer. You can't keep taking the lid off every 30 seconds to check it. You have to let it be.
It's the difference between multitasking and deep work. You can't write a novel while you're checking notifications every 30 seconds, but you're saying it's more than that. You can't even conceive of the novel in the first place.
You really can't. Your brain is in receive mode, not transmit mode. To generate something new, you have to stop receiving for a while.
Yeah.
But there's another benefit that I found particularly interesting, and this came specifically from the psychological analysis provided by Gemini.
Okay.
It's about emotional regulation and resilience.
Tell me more about that, because we usually think of resilience as something you build by facing hard things out in the world, like climbing a mountain or dealing with a crisis at work. How does sitting alone build resilience?
So Gemini suggests that solitude helps you develop the ability to comfort and motivate oneself.
Oh, that's huge. Self-soothing.
It's everything. Think about it. If you always rely on a friend to cheer you up when you're sad, or a partner to validate you when you feel insecure, or a count on social media to make you feel worthy,
You're dependent.
you're totally dependent.
Yeah.
You have outsourced your entire emotional stability. Solitude forces you to build that infrastructure internally. It fosters emotional independence. ChatGPT calls it building inner strength. It's the realization that, hey, I can handle my own emotions. I can sit with this sadness or this anger or this boredom, and I can find my own way through it. I can soothe myself.
That is incredibly empowering. It's like learning how to change a tire. You hope you don't have to do it often, but knowing you can makes you feel so much safer driving the car.
Yes, you aren't stranded if no one picks up the phone.
You become your own first responder.
That's it. And finally, there's the simple restoration aspect. Perplexity emphasized this, especially for introverts, but it really applies to everyone. In this hyper-connected world, our brains are constantly processing stimuli. Every billboard, every ding from your phone, every email.
It's exhausting.
It's neurologically exhausting. Solitude is a respite. It allows the mind to actually recharge. It's not just a nice to have. It's a biological necessity to get the energy you need to handle future social interactions.
So it's the pit stop. You can't drive the car forever without refueling. But I want to push on this a bit.
Good.
Because sometimes I sit alone to recharge and I just feel bored. Or restless. I don't feel restored. I feel fidgety. So what are we actually supposed to be doing during that pit stop? Because I think a lot of us think solitude just means not talking. But Section 3 highlights the mechanics of fulfillment. It's not just about the absence of people. It's about the presence of something else.
Yes, this is where we get into the real nuts and bolts of the brain. You can't just be alone and expect magic to happen. And Perplexity highlighted a psychological study that I thought was just fascinating.
Okay.
It broke down 3 specific intrinsic needs that have to be satisfied during positive solitude for it to actually work. This comes from something called self-determination theory.
Okay, let's take them one by one. This is like the checklist to make sure we aren't just wasting our alone time.
Exactly. So the study suggests that for solitude to be fulfilling, it must fulfill our need for autonomy, competence, and relatedness.
Okay, start with autonomy. That one seems pretty straightforward.
Autonomy is the feeling of being in complete control of your time and your choices. When you are alone, you decide exactly what to do. There is no compromise. There is no, so what do you want for dinner? I don't know. What do you want for dinner?
That whole negotiation.
That friction is just gone.
Yeah.
That feeling of total agency, that I am the captain of this hour, is incredibly restorative for the human psyche.
That makes so much sense. It's a break from the constant negotiation of just living in a society. It's pure choice. Even if the choice is just, you know what? I'm going to stare at this wall for 10 minutes. It's my wall.
It's your wall and your choice. It's the reclaiming of volition. Now, the second one is competence.
Competence. That sounds like work. Why do I want to feel competent when I'm trying to relax?
It doesn't have to be work in the employment sense. Yeah. Competence is about developing skills or hobbies without the pressure of judgment.
Ah, okay.
If you want to learn to paint, and you're terrible at it at first, doing it alone means you can fail without shame. You can practice. You can get better. That builds a sense of competence that you then carry back into the world with you. It's the joy of mastery without the pressure of performance.
I see. So it's playing the guitar badly in your room until you can play it well. Or, knitting a scarf that looks like a tangled mess at first. The joy is in the doing, not in the showing off.
Precisely. And then the third one, relatedness. And this one seems like a total paradox.
Right. How does being alone fulfill a need for relatedness? Isn't that the exact opposite of being alone?
Yeah, that sounds like a contradiction, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I'm going to be alone so I can feel more connected. How on earth does that work?
I'm waiting.
It does seem counterintuitive, but the analysis from multiple sources suggests that when you are alone, you finally have the mental and emotional space to reflect on your relationships. You think about the people you love. You appreciate them. You make sense of your recent interactions.
So you're processing your relationships.
You're processing them. Paradoxically, reflecting on your relationships while you're alone can strengthen them because you are engaging with the idea of the person, effectively prioritizing them in your mind without the distraction of them actually being there.
So you're not taking them for granted. You're actually missing them in a healthy way. You're synthesizing your feelings about them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're integrating them into your inner world. When you're with them, you're experiencing them. When you're alone, you're appreciating them. And when these 3 needs are met, autonomy, competence, and relatedness, the expert analysis suggests that alone time transforms from boring and restless to deeply fulfilling.
But there's a massive catch here, isn't there? We have to talk about quality versus quantity.
Oh, absolutely.
Because I can spend 10 hours alone and feel absolutely terrible at the end of it.
Yes, and Claude laid down a rule that I think everyone should tape to their bathroom mirror. It said, an hour of mindful solitude is worth more than days of empty isolation.
Boom. That's the takeaway right there.
It really is. It is not about how long you hide away. It is what you do with that time. And this brings us to the biggest trap of modern solitude.
The phone.
The scrolling.
The doom scroll, the fake solitude.
This is so critical.
Yeah.
If you are physically alone in a room, but you are on Instagram or TikTok or checking your email or reading the news, you are not experiencing solitude.
You are not alone.
You are experiencing distraction. You are still digitally connected. You're just with thousands of strangers instead of one friend.
You're still receiving constant input. You aren't confronting your own thoughts. You're just consuming someone else's.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're outsourcing your internal monologue to an algorithm. And that completely bypasses all the benefits we just talked about. You aren't getting the autonomy. The algorithm is choosing the next video for you. You aren't getting the self-reflection. You're just pausing your life. You are anesthetizing yourself.
That's a heavy word, anesthetizing.
But I think it's accurate. You're numbing the need for connection without actually solving it, and you're numbing the need for solitude without actually getting it. It's the worst of both worlds. You're in this limbo.
So that's the mechanical failure point. That's why you can spend a whole weekend supposedly relaxing and come back to work on Monday feeling even more drained than you were on Friday.
Yes, you weren't in solitude. You were in data consumption mode.
And your brain never got a chance to actually rest.
Precisely. But there are even bigger risks than just wasting your time. We really need to talk about Section 4, the danger zone. Because the sources were crystal clear about this. This isn't a game to play lightly. Solitude can backfire, and backfire badly.
Yeah, let's go there. Because I know there are people listening who might be thinking, I spend a lot of time alone and I feel miserable. So when does this practice become dangerous?
We have to be really responsible here. Claude specifically warns that complete prolonged isolation can lead to a distorted sense of reality.
A distorted sense of reality? What does that actually look like? Are we talking about, like, hallucinations?
Not necessarily full-blown hallucinations, but a definite warping of perspective. Think about it this way. We use other people as mirrors, as reality checks. We bounce ideas off them to see if they make sense. Hey, am I overreacting to this email from our boss? Does this shirt look weird on me? Is this business idea totally
Well, you
crazy?
get your daily sanity checks.
Yes. When you remove all of those mirrors, you can lose perspective very quickly. You can start to spiral into your own narrative, and there's nothing to stop it.
You get stuck in the echo chamber of one.
Precisely. That is the perfect term for it. If you are the only voice you hear, your anxieties can easily become facts in your mind because there's no one there to challenge them. You can convince yourself that everyone hates you or that you're a misunderstood genius when you're actually making a huge mistake. You lose the guardrails.
And Gemini backed this up too, noting that prolonged isolation leads directly to depression, anxiety, and a diminished sense of belonging. It's a very slippery slope.
And ChatGPT added a really important nuance about avoidance as a trap. This is crucial. If you were using solitude to escape challenges like, I don't want to deal with that conflict at work, so I'm just going to withdraw and hide, that delays your growth. It doesn't foster it.
It's running away, not moving toward yourself. It's using solitude as a shield, not as a sword for self-discovery.
Beautifully put, yes. And DeepSeek brought up a critical mental health consideration that we have to mention. For those who are already prone to depression or anxiety, unstructured solitude can actually exacerbate distress rather than heal it.
Why is that?
Rumination. Just chewing on the same negative thoughts over and over again. It's a real danger in unstructured solitude.
Rumination, that's the wheel just spinning in the mud, going nowhere.
Exactly. If your inner voice is already cruel, being locked in a room with it is not a sanctuary. It's a torture chamber.
So this all circles back to that core idea of the sanctuary versus the silo. There is a tipping point. If you stay in the sanctuary for too long, or for the wrong reasons, the door locks behind you and it becomes a silo.
That's a great way to put it. There is absolutely a tipping point.
Yeah.
And that leads us to the solution. How do we stay in the sanctuary and avoid getting trapped in the silo?
Yeah.
That we're covering in Section 5. The essential balance. The return. This was a clear consensus across Claude, Gemini, and Grok. Humans are fundamentally social beings. We are herd animals at our core. Solitude cannot replace connection. It must complement it.
I really like this idea of the return concept. The fulfillment you find in solitude actually depends on having meaningful connections to return to.
Right. Knowing you are alone by choice implies that you have somewhere else to go. That's the key. If you have no one to return to, solitude doesn't feel like a choice. It feels like abandonment. But if you have a community, a family, a partner, solitude feels like a well-deserved break. It's the contrast that creates the value.
And the sources were saying this isn't just selfish time. It actually enhances your relationships when you come back.
It does, profoundly. Gemini points out that it reduces dependence on others for constant entertainment or validation.
Oh, that's a big one.
It's huge. If you can be happy and content alone, you don't need your partner to entertain you 24/7. You don't need them to fix your boredom. You choose to be with them.
That's a much healthier dynamic, isn't it? It takes so much pressure off the other person. I am here with you because I love you and I want to be here, not because I can't stand to be by myself.
Exactly. It changes the entire dynamic from a needy, I need you, to a confident, I want you.
Perplexity also mentioned that recharging alone enables more meaningful social interactions later.
You bring a better version of yourself to the dinner party.
A much better version. You aren't drained. You aren't looking for them to fill some void inside you. You are already full, and you are there to share that fullness with them.
You know, there was also a really interesting cultural note that came from DeepSeek about this balance.
Yeah.
I thought this was important because we often look at this through a very Western individualistic lens.
Yes, this was a great point. DeepSeek highlighted the difference between individualistic cultures like the US or the UK and more collectivist cultures.
In the West, we often celebrate the lone wolf, right? The solitary genius, the cowboy riding off into the sunset. We romanticize solitude. But in many collectivist cultures, prioritizing the community is the path to fulfillment. Being alone is often seen as a failure of social integration, something to be pitied.
So the very definition of fulfillment looks different through these different lenses.
Radically different. So we need to be aware that our drive for solitude, or our celebration of it, is partly cultural.
That is a great perspective check. For some people, self-fulfillment means group harmony. For others, it means individual autonomy. But in both cases, you still need a balance. You can't have harmony without a self to harmonize.
Precisely. Even in collectivist cultures, the individual needs moments of respite and reflection to function well within the group.
So, okay, we've got the theory down. We know the benefits, we know the risks, we know the importance of balance. Now let's get really practical. Section 6, the practical toolkit. How do we actually do this? Because go be alone is pretty vague advice. And let's be honest, most of the listeners are busy. They have jobs, kids, commutes. They can't just run away to a monastery for a month.
No, and they don't have to. Copilot had a suggestion that I think is brilliant just in its framing. It said to treat it like a personal sabbatical.
A personal sabbatical, even if it's just for an hour.
Even if it's for 20 minutes, the framing matters. Schedule alone time, just like you would schedule a meeting with your boss or a dentist appointment. Put it on the calendar. 3.0 to 3:30 p.m. Meeting with myself.
I love that. It legitimizes it. It's not just time I couldn't fill. It is time I specifically booked. It makes it an appointment with yourself that you have to keep.
It does.
So what are we doing in that meeting? We've established we are not scrolling. That is rule number 1.
Absolutely no scrolling. Phone in another room, or at least on airplane mode. The sources suggest specific activities that engage those autonomy and competence engines we talked about. Journaling is huge.
Why journaling?
It helps process those thoughts so they don't just bounce around and become an echo chamber. It gets the thoughts out of your head and onto the paper, which makes them objective. You can look at them.
It stops that rumination loop. You write it down, and suddenly it's just words on a page, not a monster in your head. Okay, what else?
Meditation for mindfulness and presence is obviously a big one, but also reflective walks in nature came up a lot in the data from multiple sources.
Why nature specifically? Why not just walk on a treadmill in the gym?
There's something about connecting to something larger than yourself that helps keep that human-sized perspective. Trees don't care about your quarterly report. The ocean doesn't care about that awkward social interaction you had yesterday.
It creates a sense of awe.
It does. And awe has been shown to shrink your ego in a healthy way. It reminds you that the world is very big, and your problems are, in the grand scheme of things, relatively small.
And learning new skills. That goes back to the competence need we discussed earlier.
Yes. Tinkering, building something, knitting, coding, learning a new recipe. Engaging the hands often has a wonderful way of freeing the mind.
Now, I know we have listeners who are thinking, I'm an extrovert, all of this sounds like actual torture, and we have others thinking, I'm an introvert, this is my dream life. Does one size really fit all here?
That's a great question, and DeepSeek and Perplexity both address this. For introverts, this is their natural default recharge mode. They find it energizing. For extroverts, it might take more work. Or, and this is the key, they should take smaller doses.
So if you're a learner, listener who loves people and gets energy from being in a crowd, maybe don't start with a 3-day silent weekend retreat.
Exactly. That would be shock therapy. That would probably do more harm than good. Start small. Copilot emphasizes what it calls an iterative approach. It's dynamic. The balance isn't fixed.
So listen to yourself.
Listen to your own battery gauge. Maybe this week you only need 20 minutes because you're feeling pretty good. Next week, you're super stressed and fried, and maybe you need to carve out half a day if you can. It's not a rigid ratio.
Just start with 20 minutes. No phone. Just sit there and see what happens.
See what creaks and groans you hear. Don't judge them. Just notice them.
Okay, so let's bring this all home. We've looked at the architecture of alone time, the benefits, the mechanics, the dangers. What does this all mean for us sitting here today?
Well, if we synthesize this entire deep dive, the conclusion is that solitude is a doorway, that's Copilot's word, and it's a catalyst, that's Gemini's word. but it is not the destination.
You don't go there to stay.
You don't go there to stay. You go there to grow, and then you come back.
The winning formula seems to be intention plus balance plus activity equals fulfillment.
I think that's a perfect summary. And just remembering that final crucial reminder, it is not the absence of others that ultimately matters, but the presence of a healthy relationship with oneself.
I want to leave everyone with one last provocative thought that we found woven into the research. It draws from that idea of existential authenticity, and it's a question to ask yourself during your next meeting with yourself.
Go for it.
If you stripped away every single role you play for other people, employee, parent, friend, partner, all of it, and you just sat in a room alone, strictly with yourself, would you like the person sitting there?
Wow. That is the ultimate test, isn't it?
It really is. Do you enjoy your own company? And if the answer is, I don't know, or maybe even no, then perhaps a little intentional solitude is exactly what you need to get to know that person better, because after all, you're the only person you're guaranteed to spend the rest of your life with.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Go find your sanctuary this week. Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive.
Take care, everyone.